Hello, thank you everybody for coming to our webinar. We have got a number of attendees filling in. Everybody's coming in from the waiting room, so we're just going to give it a moment before getting started. In the meantime, for the hundreds of people who have registered, we are so excited for you to be here today. So go ahead in the chat, please say hi, let us know where you're located, where you're coming from. Vanessa and I are coast to coast.
Yes. Portland to Boston.
Yeah, and actually today I'm in the DC area. I mean, it is like so amazing to be connecting coast to coast. Everybody's filling in from Maine, Wyoming, Italy. Vanessa, let's go to Italy next.
Canada. Yes. Close to 400 people joining us today, Noah. This is so exciting.
Well, Texas. This is so great. Trinidad, Trini. I love it. Oh, this is so great. So let's go ahead and get started. Just keep tuning in, keep chatting away. Maybe you'll see some connections, some familiar faces. Thank you guys so much for tuning into our webinar today, Green Roofs and Beehives, Innovations in Living Roofs. I love this topic. I'm Noah Wilson-Rich. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Best Bees company. And tomorrow is Earth Day, which makes today Earth Day Eve. So thank you guys so much for choosing to be here today. We know how very busy you are. Our aim is to inspire each of you to create green spaces and sustainable places. And joining me today is Vanessa Kaiches of Columbia Green Technologies. Now, Vanessa is the CEO of Columbia Green. Welcome, Vanessa. I am so glad you could join me today.
Thank you, Noah. I'm so excited to do this with you. You rock. You're a genius of the world. So thank you for putting this together.
Well, you are too. I love you. You're great. Vanessa and I first met in 2016 at a conference. Remember those? We sat down together and realized that our businesses and our visions aligned. And since then, we've stayed in touch. And we decided to do this session together in particular because both of our companies are pushing towards the future. We are completely invested in the gray to green movement. And it's taking hold, constantly innovating and delivering the greatest impact across industries. And the momentum is growing. We're seeing more and more attention from businesses who want to do more than just the status quo. And they're really searching for innovations that can help our climate and our world. Now, together, we need to do all that we can to promote biodiversity and climate resilience through initiatives of all shapes and sizes. And today, you are a part of the effort that's going from gray to green. It's the right thing to do. And because we've got the data to back it up, there are real and tangible benefits for businesses that get behind it. Now, in this context, Vanessa and I realized that we've got a lot to share about innovations in living roofs and the projects that integrate honeybee hives with green rooftop installations. We've got great projects and the data to back it up. So that's what brought us here today. Now, one of the projects that the Best Bees company and Columbia Green Technologies work on together is really amazing. It's the iconic Chrysler building in New York City. What better place to commit to innovation? This building has a green roof and honeybee hives. It's Art Deco plus state of the art. Now, we'll talk about this example more as we go, including the role that it played in some recent research on honeybees and green roofs. Now, Vanessa and I have put together a great program for today. We're turning talk into action here because at our 2022 Earth Day webinar right now, we're about to get pumped. So let's get learning and we're going to have some fun this hour, we promise. Here's what we're going to cover. Why bees matter. This is so important. Why our lives are so inextricably connected to bees and to pollinators. We're going to cover why planted green rooftops are so important for going from gray to green. And we'll show you several innovative designs that are really inspiring. And then we're also going to show you some practical how-to advice on installing and maintaining your own project and really making it count. Now, our goal is to share the very latest with you about how leading companies and real estate properties are turning underutilized spaces into leveraged assets that are adding real value for their stakeholders and to their bottom lines. So it is a packed agenda, but even so, we want to hear from you. So Delaney, who works with me at Best Bees in Boston, hey Delaney, will be monitoring the Q&A. So please go ahead and type in your questions into the Q&A window. It's separate from the chat. We also want to find out who is here with us today. So again, if you're just tuning in, keep adding into the chat where you're from. We're going to be putting up a poll to see who is here, who's in our audience today. So please go ahead and select the one that fits your situation the most. This poll is going to be open just for 15 seconds. So go ahead and answer this question. It should have popped up by now. Do you have a green roof and or beehives?
Awesome. Answers are coming in. I see there's still a few folks to answer some questions. I'll give you guys a few more seconds here. All right, we'll go ahead and end the poll and I'll share the results with you all. You should be able to see these. We have the highest percentage, 52% of those folks here today do not have beehives or a green roof. So it sounds like there's a lot to learn and we hope you guys have a lot of takeaways from this. I'll pass it back to you, Noah.
Thanks, Delaney. It is so great to see so much enthusiasm for this topic, and we've got some work to do, everybody. So let's dive on in. So for the Best Bees Company, we are a mission-driven company, and our mission is to improve bee and pollinator health overall and contribute to the science that supports the expansion of pollinator populations. Now, we offer professionally managed beehives that allow you to make a measurable impact. So for us, it's not just about keeping bees or making honey, although we definitely do that, but those are wonderful endeavors unto themselves. Rather, our goals are way, way bigger than that. And that's what makes us unique. So we take a scientific approach to the art of beekeeping. We consider our hives as living data points, and each beehive is a data yielding beehive. And those data let us know how the colony is doing. Each one of our beehives in over 20 cities nationwide across the United States contributes data to our network. And we want to learn all that we can from bees, and we do see this scaling internationally. And we're sharing our findings with research partners like MIT and NASA. We apply what we learn to efforts to help sustain all pollinators and to make a tangible, positive impact on the environment, one beehive at a time. We consider this work urgent because, simply stated, bees matter. I mean, there are 200,000 species of pollinators hard at work every day, pollinating vegetation all across the globe. Now, 10% of those are bees. And pollinators are often said to be responsible for 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we eat. That includes over 70 crops of fruits and vegetables, as well as nuts and herbs, spices, even the plants that feed our cattle and livestock, supporting our dairy, cheese, and meat industries. Pollinators as a whole contribute up to $577 billion annually in global food production. Now, bees in the United States alone contribute nearly $20 billion every year. So much life depends on bees. And virtually all flowers that you plant need pollination. So human life also hinges on the survival of pollinators. But they're dying. You see, pollinator populations are declining all across the globe, and we need solutions. Luckily, we think we have one. Now, in all of the research that we've done, and our partners have done as well, we know that adding plant habitat is one thing that we can all do. So where can we add plants? Well, just look up. There are acres and acres of unused real estate that can be turned into lush, biodiverse, green spaces. And in fact, we know that bees tend to thrive in cities while they're dying in so many other places. Cities are vibrant environments for pollinators. Now, it might not look that way to us, but from a bee's eye view, yes. Cities offer bees a surprisingly diverse choice amongst parks and playgrounds and backyards, short trees on the street, tall trees all around the parks, even median strips. Now, our research has shown that urban bees pollinate 8 times more plant species than their nearby suburban bees. Urban beehives have higher winter survival rates, and they provide 56% more honey than their country cousins. So when Best Bees installs beehives in Boston or San Francisco or Seattle, often we're putting them on rooftops. Now, sometimes a green roof, but sometimes not. Bees do okay on vacant roofs, but they do better when there's some green around them. Green is better. And it's not just for bees. Green is better for all of us. So now I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa to talk about why rooftops are so important for going from gray to green.
Thank you, Noah. And this is really exciting because I did see on the poll today that not everybody does have a green roof or bees yet. And so my objective today is to help you, designers, developers, even anyone at home, to help you understand what's happening across every city in this country and the world in this movement from gray to green. And so what's happening and how we do this and where the return on the investment's happening is every city in this country right now is having a combined sewage overflow issue. It's an infrastructure issue. Basically, we have tons of concrete in our cities. We know the storms are rising. So what are we going to do to be able to help solve this? And so basically, we are trying to move to this movement, which is going to move from this concrete pipes where there's nowhere for the water to go. We have extreme heat. There's heat island effects. There's air pollution. There's how do we reduce energy? And so what we're trying to do is move from this gray concrete in the city, in every city across this country, whether you're in Portland, DC, or Boston. That's why Noah and I are working so closely together, moving towards the green infrastructure movement. And so what it looks like is moving from this concrete jungle more to this beautiful green space, this nature-based solution. And it's also to build resilient cities, and it's called green infrastructure. And the beauty about it now, and this green revolution that's happening now, is this actually ends up being cheaper for the developer. So we are seeing the most high-profile architects, landscape architects, and developers move from this gray to green movement. And this infrastructure like this green, not only helps manage the stormwater, which keeps it out of the pipes and stops it from flooding, but we're also reducing the air pollution. We're also reducing the heat island effect. And we're also reducing the building's energy. And it's even proven now by developers, by doing all of these things, that these assets are even becoming more and more popular. And the best part about it, which is why Noah and I have teamed up so well, is it's bringing back habitat. We're actually bringing back habitat to this urban environment, where we have not seen the bees and butterflies for years. We're now seeing this movement, gray to green, also bring back the habitat, which is just so exciting. So the market drivers, wherever you're at, is this whole movement to bring nature back into our cities to help solve a variety of problems: stormwater, building your green building, wellness. There's a huge movement post-COVID now for architects and designers, whether you're residential or commercial, to be able to build places for people that give people access to air, light, and nature. So the demand is insane right now for green and nature. And I actually call it green envy, is who doesn't want to look down on this beautiful green rooftop. This one is actually in Chicago. It's called the Chicago Post Office. We're going to talk more about it in a minute. It's by JLL. And they took a 120-year-old building and it had sat vacant for 50 years, put a green rooftop on it, and now everyone around there wants to go and work at this building. And so we know from a wellness perspective, the results are in. Nature helps lower stress, increase productivity, better focus, and one of my most favorites for the hospitals, it's improving recovery rates at hospitals. Some of my most favorite things, and Noah too, is working with hospitals and greening them and seeing the effect for the patients. So if we know it's going to have that type of effect on people, we know it also has a great effect for bees. This movement is here, it's happening everywhere, and we're so glad to have you here today to talk more about what we can do and how we can do it better. This is the Gray to Green movement. We're in it. Each one of you today can help make a difference. And greening, whether it's your home or your commercial real estate, we each can do something. The other piece to this that's super important, because we're always trying to figure out the ROI, the cost savings. Something with sustainability is also making sure that it meets the budget and it's affordable. And so one of the great things that's happening right now with this ESG movement is that companies, publicly traded companies, developers, all have to now report on their environmental, social governance. How well are they doing as a company to help with the environment, social justice, or corporate governance and taking care of their employees? And so one of my favorite quotes right now is the CEO from Credit Suisse. Can you imagine the global bank of the world coming out and saying there is no contradiction of sustainable investments and sustainable return? It's quite the opposite, actually. In many cases, sustainable investments are actually higher returning than non-sustainable investments. Insane, mind-blowing when the banks are starting to say the sustainable assets are outperforming the non-sustainable assets. It's just a huge thing for us as we all try to make a difference. Every single one of you that showed up today, this is actually changing the way that companies are going to get financing and how it affects how their shareholders are going. So this is a great movement right now because the returns are there. They can also, with this green infrastructure, they can reduce cost. Like I said, they're going to reduce their stormwater costs. They're going to reduce their heat and cooling costs. The roof is going to last 2 to 3 times longer. It could last 50 to 60 years because we buried this rooftop. It's just so exciting. And one of my favorite parts now is obviously Noah and I have been doing this for the environment and the habitat, but now it's really exciting to see that people really also care about the people. The consumer demand is insane. Who doesn't want to hang out? Check out the picture on the left. That is a 3.5 acre meadow that you can run, walk. It has a basketball court, pickleball. You can see people eating lunch. It's amazing. And so who doesn't want to hang out in a rooftop park? So we are now moving not just from doing garages and residential or office to hospitals, but we are now doing acres of rooftops to basically help this demand. So it's a very exciting time. It's the Great Agree movement. The ROI is there. We want to build these to help bring people back to work, buy your condo, apartment. Who doesn't want to have a drink at your hotel bar for a rooftop park? There's just so many reasons now to be able to move from gray to green. The ROI is there. The banks are telling us it's there. Wall Street says it's there. You guys showed up today, and we're here to tell you the results that Noah and I have been working a decade on so that you can take it to the next step, because we need each of you to take it to the next step. So with that, here's just a few case studies that Noah and I worked on with regards to where we're headed. And when we did this, I wanted to let you know there's 3 different types of kind of green rooftops. Columbia Green Technologies, we are a green roof manufacturer. We manufacture these green roofs. And 10 years ago when we started with these 4-inch systems with sedums, which you're seeing on the far left. They're fabulous, this type of system for grabbing stormwater. They're also fabulous from a sustainability perspective because a sedum, a succulent, will grab the water out of the air. They're very drought resistant. We don't have to mow them. They're very easy to maintain. They collect a lot of stormwater. They're fabulous. So basically, this is the green roofs for stormwater management. But as we've been evolving and building these rooftop parks, we've started to build, which you can see on the far right, we're now even building 4 to 5 feet of green roofs, basically. And this is how Noah and I start working together, because this is where we started as a company seeing the butterflies come back, the bees come back, the birds, geese. We get all sorts of type of things now on the top of our rooftops. So I wanted to explain, as a green roof company, we do all 3 things, and they all contribute in different ways. There's not a right or wrong. And that's the main thing Noah and I want to point out today. Every little thing you do by bringing nature back in is going to help the bees and the habitat. And there's just different ways that we do it. And we're going to teach you what we've learned so that we can just do a little bit better. So these are the 3 different ways that we can do a green roof. Now let's just talk about some of the case studies that we have with these different types of roofs right after this poll, which I think we're putting up right now. So thank you for listening to the Great Green, and case studies coming up next.
Awesome. And I'm launching a poll right now that everyone should be able to see. This is, what is your number one motivation for bringing hives or green roofing to your rooftop or outdoor space? So everyone can start throwing their responses in. I'll leave this up for about 15 seconds again, just to give everyone time to drop in your replies. So everyone go ahead and drop those in. Looks like they're still spilling in pretty quickly, so I'll give you a few more seconds. Awesome. All right, I'm going to close this out. And I'll share the results that you guys can see. So it looks like 84%. So by far the highest majority of those folks that answered these questions, their number one motivation is to help mitigate climate change. Thank you all for dropping in your answers. And Vanessa, I know you want to jump into some case studies, so I will throw it back to you.
Thank you, Delaney. And thank you everyone for the climate change, because that's why we're here today, right? On Earth Day. That's why Noah and I put this together. So great answer. I love that it wasn't just the policy driving it. I love it that it's the human. Okay, case study number one. This is the Chicago Post Office. It's an old iconic building. This is an existing building, and this gets really exciting for Noah and I because it's not just about new development. Each of us can do this on an existing building. This is basically a 120-year-old building. It sat vacant for 50 years. It opened 2 years ago, even in COVID. It's packed. It's one of JLL's most successful buildings, along with the designers Gensler and Herschel. It's a gorgeous project. It's a 3.5-acre meadow. And this is the best part, because existing buildings, we do have to think about structure. We did this in 6 inches of media. But what we really cared about was the species, the plant species. We knew the bees were going to be up here. This is some of the things we started to learn. So we did a 6-inch media, which is a lightweight, and check out those plants on the far right. Just gorgeous in only 6 inches of media. We basically have 41,000 different types of plants up there, and 58 different species were selected by Herschel. This is an insane amount of plants, and this was a great opportunity to bring in the bees, and so much so it produces 100 pounds of honey a year. It's insane. So this is where it gets exciting, because we were able to take this rooftop with all of these species, put the bees on top of it, and now we're producing honey, and we have this gorgeous rooftop that you can see people are down there also eating lunch and wanting to hang out. Who doesn't want to hang out on a 3.5-acre meadow? This is bigger than any park in the surrounding area. So this is one of our successful projects in a 6-inch media. Great palette, and the bees love it. We've got lots of honey going on. Our next case study is another one of my favorites, and I know this is for Noah too, is hospitals. So the first question I always get, and I know Noah does too, is, are people gonna get stung? Noah, pipe in, pipe in.
No, that's a bad business model. We care about safety as much as anybody else. Nobody wants to get stung. Not me, not you, not anyone.
Not anyone. And so this is why I love to share this case study. Obviously, Johns Hopkins is one of our beloved hospitals in our country. They do tons of research. They're on the forefront of figuring out how to make it better for their patients. And they have figured out bringing nature and bringing habitat brings back life. So their patients oversee this green roof, and their patients also oversee these beautiful color beehives you can see here on the right. So this is just a great example that you can put beehives. If the hospital can do it, you can tell they're not worried about the bees. They completely understand. This is just one of those amazing case studies where the patients, we get so much great feedback, not just from the patients of this hospital, but the employees. The employees love how the patients, their families, their siblings, remember when children are going to these hospitals, families are there for a long, long time. So building these types of rooftop parks, bringing back habitat, brings back life. And I had to still add, this is still managing stormwater. So this system also is collecting 310,000 gallons of water every year. We're holding Columbia Green. This is what we do. We manage stormwater on the top of the roof, so it stays out of the system, so it's not going to flood this building. So we're doing both, right? We've got the sedums to be able to help the stormwater, and we've also got the Beehives, and it's a hospital. So you can do it on the old existing building like the Chicago Post Office, or you can do it on a hospital like a new development like Johns Hopkins. Just two really, really, really great examples. Now, last but not least, this is another amazing, and I love this project. This is where Noah and I have collaborated, and this is why we're here today, to keep sharing the research that we learn. So here we go. Here it is. Here is our iconic in New York City, the Chrysler East building, obviously one of the most high-profile buildings in the world. And they took the next step of greening their plaza deck. And I can tell you there are high-profile clients in this building from all over the world, presidents, ambassadors, everybody in this. This is their plaza deck where they hold events and parties. So we had to design a system that was flexible so that they could move things around, so that they could put the tables and chairs. This is a party place. They love to throw parties. So we had to build a system that was able to be movable. What I love about this system, while it's on the iconic Chrysler building, this is a $10 a square foot system. This was an existing building. We had to put it on existing paver system. And so this is $10 a square foot. You could put this on your garage or your house. Everybody here today, it doesn't have to be just the big hospitals or the big commercial buildings. You could take like something like this and put it on your garage or your doghouse. Like Noah and I are here, everybody can make a difference. So I love showing this project because while we developed something that's for the Chrysler building, we also developed something you can use on your home even. But this is where it gets interesting. I personally went up to this rooftop and saw thousands of bees. In fact, there's 60,000 bees who come up on this roof, and they will travel almost 5 miles to collect the pollen that they need. And when I learned that, I was very, bewildered how a bee could travel 5 miles through New York City. And therefore, I really wanted to learn how was our system providing the nutrients for the bees. What were we doing? And Best Bees came up there. Their beehives are up there. Best Bees is the best at research and honey DNA. I partnered up with Noah. I said, Noah, how are we doing? Are we contributing to the nutrients? I see thousands of bees up here. Clearly they love this place, but give me the data. How are our seedings contributing? And so we learned two things. One is that there are the green earth. It's very cool. A rooftop can get very hot. Noah's going to talk about this in a minute. It can get like 130, 140, 150 degrees on the top of a rooftop in New York City. Insane. That's the heat island effect. That's the air pollution. So our green earths can stay very cool, like a 75 degrees. So they're just chilling out, hanging out on the sedum, which is why I saw thousands of them. But then I wanted to know, like I said, how are we doing? Are we contributing to the nutrients? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Noah. He is the world-renowned guru on this subject. And he is going to tell you the results, which are amazing and astounding, and then where we're going to go from here. So Noah, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. This is so exciting. I just want to draw attention to the picture you have in the bottom right. We see where the bees are going. We see bees on sedum, but where are they really going? What can science do to help inform our best practices, to help us keep innovating so that we can grow our businesses, but also provide the most value to all of the real estate companies, all of the large corporations, and all the small homeowners? I love that you said dog houses. In our run through here, Vanessa's dog was barking and mine was barking, and we were just having that funny real life moment. I love it. So let's dive a little bit into the science part just for a few minutes, because I'm so excited to be able to combine the work that we do with also what we're seeing. And all the data and the science, how can that reveal the truth to us about what's really going on? Because the new data that we collect, it's telling us things, and it's all about how we share and work together to advance. So let's go back to what I called the bee's eye view of a city. Now, if we map all the beehives in all the cities where we have a presence, so from Portland to DC to Denver, we're able to look at habitat at scale. And this is really important too for companies that have many different properties in many different cities. How do we do this at scale? So we ask the big questions of where are the bees doing really well and where are they dying? And what's the habitat looking like that underlies both of those different factors in bee health? We want to know, why does the habitat matter? And it seems to matter because of nutrition. And nutrition means plants. So when we've got a biodiverse diet, meaning there's good food sources from a variety of plants, we're seeing that the bees are more productive and they live longer. Now, if one of the biggest levers to saving the bees is planting diverse gardens, then you and we can really do something. We can leverage our rooftops to improve the nutrition for pollinators. Now, my lab discovered a way to measure bee nutrition. And again, we're looking at honeybees as an indicator. It's giving us information that we can then make assumptions for other pollinator species too. And that's a really complex point here because there's no nutrition label for a flower patch or for a rooftop garden. We had to innovate to come up with a way to collect more data on the question. So we called this project Honey DNA, and it's the analysis that we did at the Chrysler Building hives. Now, honey is a snapshot of plant landscapes, making it a really powerful and a really tasty research tool to understand ecosystems over time and the impacts of climate change on our environment. Honey DNA, it's a deep dive into the biology of honey. If we kind of zoom in, we can sequence the genome of all of the pollen found in honey that we harvested from our beehives. So it's just like Ancestry DNA or 23andMe for humans, but for the first time ever applied to plants and biodiversity and environments. Now, Best Bees invented the Honey DNA approach. We're the only company that offers it. And we've been running Honey DNAs for the last 7 years. Every hive is different and it changes across the seasons. And so over the years, we get snapshots in time about what these environments look like. More on that in our TED Talks, so feel welcome to do a little bit more of a deep dive there. But in short, the average honey DNA sample has about 150 species of plants represented. And the range is from 52 species of plants to 411 species of plants in one little teaspoon, one taste of honey. That's how many different plants the bees are sourcing nectar from. Now, the higher the number, the greater the biodiversity in that area. This is how we're measuring an impact. So we're going to go back to where Vanessa left off. We recently did a honey DNA analysis on the hives at the Chrysler Building. Now, Best Bees installed 2 hives there in the spring of 2020, and Columbia Green had installed the sedum garden prior to that. Now, the Best Bees research team had a hypothesis that the honey DNA results would show that the bees pollinated the sedum and that it was a primary food source. Well, we found sedum many times in honey DNA over the years across many cities. And so we expected to find it on the Chrysler Building hives too, especially after seeing the bees over all of the plants. However, we found almost no trace of sedum in the honey. And this was a really unexpected and amazing finding, to be quite honest. It's uncovered some really interesting new questions that have really important implications for habitat. So the first question that comes to mind is if the bees are all over the sedum flowers, then why aren't they using it as a food source? And what are they using it for? And then we want to know what the implications are for rooftop implementations. How could we be doing more? What could we change for best practices? What things should we keep in mind? And also we wondered, is there a better green roof plant option that could support pollinators based on these ideas? So let me take a stab at the first question. So what are the bees doing on the flowers? And then I'm going to pass it back over to Vanessa. Now, the sedum plants were providing a safe place for the bees. I mean, the plants are keeping them warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We see green roofs insulate buildings too and lower HVAC costs. So similar approaches apply to the bees. In the summer, the green rooftops, as Vanessa said, are often around 75 degrees compared to their next door black vacant rooftop that's over 120 degrees. So the plants are offering protection from the wind, the protection maybe from predators like birds, and likely providing a water source. So the green rooftop is providing the bees with a lot of important benefits, which means that sedum is a really viable option. But if we want to do more, then we should be thinking about what plants will provide both good environmental benefits as well as good foraging nutrition for their food. Now, we've advanced the science that helps us to continually improve. And our research is helping us to better understand what the bees like for their nutrition and how that can correspondingly relate to the work that we do. So for example, here we've got a list of the top plants for pollinators in the New York City region, since we're using that as a case study today. We do reports and lists like this for other metro areas as well. We've published some of those in National Geographic. We've published some of those on our nonprofit website. So we're always collecting data, analyzing it, thinking about best practices and sharing it. Now, green roof designs can combine these plants with the sedums, perhaps, whether in planters or even if they're plugs put directly into the sedums, depending on the plant. Pass it back over to you, Vanessa.
So we did with that data, and like I said with Noah, while we were disappointed that a lot of the pollen wasn't coming from the sedums, we also know that sedums are amazing. So one of the things we don't want you to take away is it one or the other. It's not. Sedums are probably the most amazing thing we can do in the cities because they are sustainable. Like I said, they're drought resistant, they're low maintenance. You can do them on lightweight buildings, existing buildings. They collect a lot of stormwater. So there's a lot of great things with sedums. But what we can do is that list that Noah just gave us, now that we know where they were going and traveling 5 miles to go get their pollen, why can't we take some of those plants and put them into our green roofs? And so that's what we're collaborating with the best bees at Columbia Green Technologies. We work with the design teams, the landscape architects, developers. We can work with you to do a sedum roof and then integrate with native plants or perennials. That list that Noah just gave you, we can integrate them into the sedum, as you can see on the far right with the little yellow flowers. We've already started to do that. We're now taking those plant lists so we can build better pollinators so the bees don't have to go as far. Even on the Chrysler building, we're already taking steps. We were on the phone with them yesterday. They're already so eager. They have a huge European Union party coming up, and we need to make sure those bees are happy. We're going to start filling them up with perennials and natives to help those bees. We're taking it to the next step. So the one thing we wanted to teach you today is that the sedums are still great, but we can do better, right? We can now take the list that Noah gave us where we know the bees are going, and we can integrate those into our green roofs. And you can do it at home or on a big building, either way. So together we have these lists from our research, which is so exciting. That's why that Chrysler building research was so exciting, because we would have never known if we wouldn't have taken the steps. And that's the important part of sustainability, is looking at the research and evolving and growing. And so we're still very happy. I see the bees are out there tanning on the sedums, which I love too. And I see they're partying on the sedums, but I want them to be eating and being very happy so that we eat the honey and we're very healthy. Therefore, we're taking that type of list and integrating them into our green roofs. And so that is a little bit of how we've taken our research. We now know the plants to use, and we can still integrate them into our green roofs, right? We can take it to the next step. And that's what's so exciting, is that companies like the Best Bees and Columbia Green Technologies, we are integrating our technologies, whether you're integrating with solar, green roofs, bees. You can see it on the far left. We have these barren rooftops. And so this gray to green movement is so exciting because there's so much we can do in the cities to help make it better for the environment, for the people and the pollinators. And so we're innovating our companies for all of our technologies to continue to work better together so that we can build these rooftop parks in urban areas. Because now post-COVID, we want to build rooftop parks, which here we have a concert going on, a beer garden in the back. This is a rooftop park where people want to live, work, and play outside, and including the bees. We want to make sure that we're keeping those bees and those butterflies happy. And so what I hope you've learned today is, taking our research that we had, that it's possible to continue to do sedum rooftops. We can do these large rooftops. And as you can see, the green revolution is now, the green infrastructure is now, and bee and pollinators, thanks to our research for what we can do on rooftops, is now. And together we can help the market evolve to the next phase. As you can see, this mall on the far left, I'm so excited. This is an existing mall, and they're going to turn it into a rooftop park. How great for the community. And same on the far right, Texas, go Texas. This 60-acre development, it's insane. Green nature and nature-based solution is where we're headed, but we can do better. And today's research is what we wanted to share with you today on how we're going to take it to the next level. And together, we're going to provide you with designs and information so that you can do it better. And with that, thank you so much. And Noah, you end this thing, get people excited about what they can do next as birthday approaches.
Yeah, right on, Vanessa. You know, we're going to do a big Q&A for sure. What's really important to understand about data is that it gives us information to consider. You know, our plant lists are not do this. It's to really get information to say, well, what do we want to do about this now? Do we pull out the natives? Do we have conversations with our community for what makes sense? What might be culturally important? What might help us meet our goals? So data, it's not saying do everything. It's really to spark a conversation and to do better. And it's all about, you've got to remember that there's no one person, there's no single company that can save the bees and pollinators alone. When you focus on pollinators, you're really creating this path to a virtuous cycle. You know, pollinators are thriving in communities, and when they're doing that, the food system is greener and doing better. That's how we can make a positive impact on our community health and on climate justice. And so we're really in this together. And it's going to take a grassroots approach to ensure the stability of life on Earth. Now, luckily, it is happening right now, right here in 2022. We have a greater awareness about biodiversity and sustainability perhaps than ever. Each example that we've talked about today showcases a company's commitment to making a difference, one building rooftop and honeybee hive at a time. So when taken collectively, they help us to define a movement towards sustainability, community-wide resiliency, and the Greater Green Movement. Now, we have covered a lot of ground today, and if you are energized by any of these topics and you want to get involved, here are some concrete ways that you can take action this year. The first one is that every project needs what we call a pollinator champion. Now, that's a person, and that could be you. So spread the word about the importance of this work and what you've learned today, and make it a doable effort for your team. The second one is to identify underutilized space. Is it a roof, maybe a terrace, even just a planter, or even some grounds? The third one is imagine the possibilities for that space. You know, remember that we're living in a really dynamic time. Imagine gorgeous green roof designs that give your tenants and your employees and your stakeholders and your families a dose of vitamin N for nature, an environment that gives them a sense of well-being, and a measurable way to show how green a roof is and how that can help your business meet its environmental goals. Lastly, become part of the solution. Every single one of us has an important role to play, whether big or small. Plant something this year, at home or at work or both. Share what you're doing with others and share it with enthusiasm to help them do it too. Now work together and keep maximizing our impact on grand challenges like the climate crisis, food insecurity, and the loss of biodiversity. All right, now, finally, we're ready to dive into your questions. So Delaney, what questions do we have?
Awesome. First, just amazing job, Vanessa and Noah. Thank you both for all of your wonderful insights. I will hold the slide on this screen just for contact information for everyone. And as a quick note, if everyone that has questions could drop it into the Q&A section instead of the chat, that will be really helpful for me to organize and sort through questions as they come through. And we have just over 10 minutes, which is a great amount of time for us to be able to dig in to some questions for you guys. So first question that I see, which is a great question, is what types of sustainability reporting do you both provide that can be brought back to clients and companies? Noah, I'll let you answer that one first.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Delaney, and thanks for asking the question. Sustainability reporting is a really big area of focus for Best Bees right now. So I'll give you a couple examples from our projects, from custom reporting to even global trends. The first one, it's from a LEED standpoint. So your project can get up to 7 LEED credits for green buildings for on-premises beehives, and then up to 13 site credits. These are with the US Green Building Council. So we actually put together a course, and that educational course is online at usgbc.org if you want to learn a little bit more about those credits. Second, we've created custom reports. We call them bee and biodiversity reports. So because our beehives are networked, We can provide accurate data on your specific beehives and then attach them to trends. So, such as how biodiverse the area is around your office. That's something that we're really seeing investor demands ask. They're beautifully designed reports. We have full-time artists on staff. Our creative director, Paige Mulhern, works with Delaney, who's our amazing marketing manager. And these reports can be standalone or they can be incorporated into a company's larger ESG reporting structure. And then third, I'll just add, if we zoom all the way out to a really global view, we can look at benchmarks like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals or the SDGs. And Best Bees just did a deep dive into the SDGs. And I was really inspired to do that actually after seeing a whole lab at MIT that measures itself by those goals. And so I thought, what a great way to benchmark the progress that we're making using the SDGs. And we found that honeybee hives, and again, it's really the beehives that are specifically networked to collect data. So when they're scientifically managed, those beehives help to contribute up to 10 of the SDGs. And we've got a paper on it. So, Delaney, if you want to put a link in the chat, maybe, I don't know if you have that link handy for our white paper on the UN SDGs, but feel welcome to share that. And Vanessa, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, reporting is very important for green roofs. In fact, for Columbia Green Technologies, it's made us one of the market leaders in why we've done 2,500 projects coast to coast, because we collect and manage stormwater. So from a reporting perspective, our job is to work with the civil engineers and figure out how much stormwater we're collecting, how much water we're cleaning. And so we do that on almost every project. We are figuring out how much stormwater we're helping to collect and clean to keep it out of the city infrastructure and to help that building not flood. And that's what we lead on as a market leader. We care about how we're making an impact on the stormwater infrastructure. So reporting is a very big deal. And the other big thing for green roofs, just like for bees, is for the green building, the United States green building, or if you're going to do a LEED or a platinum building, a green roof is going to get you up to 16 to 20 points. So if you're going to put a white roof on, you're going to get 2 points. If you put a green roof on, you're going to get 16 to 20 points. And that's because a green roof, again, helps manage stormwater, reduces the building's energy, reduces air pollution, brings back habitat. And so we're reporting for LEED on those green buildings. So we're doing both, how we're helping manage and retain the stormwater and reducing the fees for the owner. That's the ROI, making it cheaper for them. And also how we're reporting to USGBC on how we're providing the green roof to meet energy savings and habitat.
Awesome. Thank you both for those great answers. I'm going to hop down to our next question. Do building owners, property managers, and tenants all have to agree on a green roof strategy? What is the most common path when you have these various entities? Noah, I'll let you answer this one first again.
Yeah, I'll go back to what we call the pollinator champion. So we found that most projects that have this internal advocate, somebody who advocates for beehives, for a green rooftop, where they can communicate their message with some enthusiasm to really garner the attention and perhaps support of that by their colleagues, that really is the most successful approach. And that can be the owner, it can be the property manager, or the tenant. The pollinator champion can come from any of these groups, but it really, we find it helpful to have that one point person. Yeah. Do you experience that too, Vanessa?
Well, yeah, it's really amazing just in the last year because of post-COVID, almost all building owners across this country on existing and new are trying to figure out how to make people happier in their building. And they really are championing bringing green space on the ground, on the walls and the roof. And so you really, as a tenant, even if you're in a building or a hotel or a condo building, I recommend you going to them and telling them about our story today and how the impact, the return on investment. And that developer or building owner is going to champion this because they want their asset to stay valuable. They don't want you to leave their condo building or their apartment building or not pick their hotel. Is that those building owners are now in a time where they have to green their building in order to make people happy. So I highly recommend you could go to them, but those building owners right now are championing it themselves. It's a really great time.
Yeah, it really seemed like pre-COVID that these products and ideas were more of a luxury, and now green is the new mandate. We're seeing that green space is the new amenity that tenants are looking for both offices and residential places.
Yeah.
and adding some data to benefit reporting. I think there's so many benefits, and also the credit that one person in an organization can have when, this is their idea that they're putting forward. That also feels really good to build community around.
Awesome. Thank you both. I'm seeing a couple questions, so I'm going to kind of try and group them into one. I think everyone's really curious about that agave that we got back in our honey DNA results. I'd love, Noah, since I know you have a strong eye on that analysis, to talk through that. What's happening with the agave in New York City?
It is so funny. It's a theme of my scientific career. For whatever hypothesis I tend to put forward to answer a research question, not only is that typically not supported, but the opposite tends to be true. So when we did the honey DNA project for our site at the Chrysler Building, and we did not see sedum, our team was like, how do we meet with Vanessa and share the data? And as a scientist, we just got to lay it out on the table and say, it's agave. And so, Vanessa,
agave? I don't have agave.
Bees can fly for miles. And this is the really fun element of design. When we're thinking about pollinators, hummingbirds like red flowers. Bees like blue and purple flowers. Bees can't see red, but they can see ultraviolet. So you can have a lot of fun when you're looking at data, you're thinking about information, you're understanding that the science is the truth. It doesn't matter what we think about it or what we're trying to make happen. And so when we see agave, okay, maybe that's a cactus on a rooftop, maybe it's flowering. And so maybe with Columbia Green, they may consider in a pot, maybe adding a cactus element. Who knows? But agave has some other fun elements with medicinal benefits that can build community too. So it's something where it's really great to see people asking questions about and noticing, because that's what you need to do with the data, especially when you see non-native invasive plants on a list. We are not saying go do that. And we're not saying let's replace sedum with agave, but we are saying let's have a conversation about it and think how we can do our best.
And I love that that was the question, because when you did approach our team to tell us that it wasn't necessarily the sedum, I said agave, where are they going? And so what we want to do at Columbia Green is we are going to integrate those into our designs and our sedums and put that into our planners, because clearly they love them in New York City and it's not hard to do. So that's the great thing about the data, is I said the same thing and my team was kind of shocked as well, but it's easy to do. So bring in some agave into New York City.
Yeah, and I love how it's very local. This is how we do local research at scale. So, okay, agave in New York, we're seeing a lot of trees in New York as well. Linden trees, honey locust, those are big sources of nectar. But like where Vanessa is today in Portland, Oregon, we're seeing mostly rose honey. And it's the city of roses. And there's so much fun you can have if you have a property asset there and say, you're telling the story. Local honey is a taste of the property, and we're seeing investor meetings where they're tasting their assets. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it really just adds sustainability and builds community when you can engage the senses in storytelling.
Noah, that's just like wine.
The terroir, you can be a honey sommelier event at the office.
Exactly. It's really exciting. Exactly. Here in Portland, we love putting the roses, because rose honey, and it's just like wine. So now we can party a little bit with our honey, our rose honey.
I love that. I'd love to ask a question, again, trying to kind of group a few different questions that I'm seeing come in, which is how this science is supporting smaller rooftops, potentially even residential homes, backyards, garden spaces in urban areas. What does this research mean if you only have a small space? Vanessa, I'll toss this one to you first. Then over to Noah.
So we love this part. So yes, you saw some amazing rooftop parks that we do, but we also love the residential. So if you go to Columbia Green Technologies, we've actually built green roof modules that you can purchase, even if you wanted to do a 2-foot space or a 3-foot space. Like Noah said, we've done the dog houses, is that it doesn't have to be big. Everybody can make a difference. And at Columbia Green, we've designed it from a weight perspective. So you can do it on a doghouse, to your garage, to a commercial building. And so we love the residential because every person matters. Everything that we do matters. So if you have a little rooftop space and you don't want it black anymore, call Columbia Green Technologies. We will send you something that fits that rooftop, no matter how small it is. We don't care. And then I know, Noah, you're going to add on this. You can put a beehive anywhere.
You really can, because bees are everywhere. They're around the world, and it's part of why everybody can connect somehow with honeybees. Their stories, maybe somebody's grandparent or you knew a beekeeper, or honey can be very important to religion. So this goes very deep back in human history. And again, when we talk about honeybees in a webinar like this, we're not just saying only honeybees, but they're an indicator species for how all the other 20,000 species of bees might be doing. And if we can shift our perspective into doing things that might help one pollinator, then we're likely doing actions that will help others. So whether you get a honeybee hive, which takes up a 2 by 3 foot space that includes room for the beekeeper to stand, that box beehive, the stackable boxes, that design has not changed since the 1850s. And so the man who invented it, Langstroth, he kind of got it right. So if you have enough space there, again, when we're working with gentle bees, when we're collecting data and really carefully taking a scientific approach, we can do this in any space where it fits. The bees in the second TED Talk I was talking about, when they fly off of my deck, there are no bees in the people space. So there'd be just flying right off, and we were using that beehive as a cocktail table, as living furniture. Kind of a weird idea, but I think that's where we're going. So we can integrate sustainability, habitat, biodiversity, so much more in our everyday lives, from adding bees to adding habitat to, even if you live in a city with no space, you can do guerrilla gardening by throwing a seed bomb into a spot of unused land. So maybe talk to plant experts, figure out what seeds to choose that are appropriate for your local area, make sure it's a good ecological match, and everybody can take action regardless of age, ability, status, anything.
That's great. All right. And we have time for one more question. I will again do my best to summarize what I'm seeing as a few different questions that are similar that have to do with native plants and native pollinators. And I know both of our companies care deeply about this. So I'd love to pass it, Noah, to you first to talk about how what we do at Best Bees and then at Columbia Green supports those different native species, whether those are pollinators or the plants and biodiversities in these different regions that we support.
I love this. The conversation back around 2005 when I started my PhD work in bees was, why bees? Why are you working with bees? And that's come along so far with the farm to table movement. Now we understand food doesn't just come from the grocery store. It comes as part of the system. People starting to wonder, where is this food coming from? Now this rooftop to table movement, when we're starting to see more urban agriculture, it's really advanced the question in the general public. Well, what species of bee are you working with? Yes, great. Awesome. We can talk about more relevant things. It's terrific. And so again, there are 20,000 species of bees all around the world. And when we're thinking about helping them, if we don't even know who they are, how many species of bees can anybody here name? Even for myself as a bee expert, it's like 10. And so there are so many things out there that we just don't see as we do see bees on sedum that we have to better understand. So at Best Bees, our research and development team, led by Emily O'Neill, has what's called the Native Pollinator Initiative. And our mission from day one has been to improve bee health. It's never been just about honeybees. We've shown this, and again, in our TED Talks, but also our book with Princeton University Press called The Bee, A Natural History. Chapter 6 has what's called the Bee Directory. You can get to know these other species of bees that are less understood. When we're creating habitat, when we're thinking about how to help them, we think about two things: nesting and foraging. So nesting habitat, we can do what are called bee hotels. Most of these native or other less understood bees are crevice dwelling. And so we can do a specially designed habitat for them. And Best Bees is starting to do this nationwide at scale with the blue orchard bee. Super cute, super native, really, really fun. And then the other part, of course, and I'll kick it over to Vanessa with the foraging habitat. If you think about what bees are out there, of course, think about what plants they're foraging on. So mostly there's a connection between where a bee is from and its native plants that are from there too. But we do see that bees are generalists. It was very difficult to find a specialist bee. So it's all about plant diversity. It's all about making sure plants are in bloom as long as the season goes, and continuing the conversation and asking these hard questions. Vanessa, do you want to add anything to that too?
Well, it's a really great question. And every region, it's a complex question, right? And an important question, because you don't want to just have the same species across the country. And so as we work Columbia Green Technologies across the entire country, we look at it, there's kind of 6 regions. And we look at the type of plant life in those regions, and there's thousands. And so now what we're doing is at Columbia Green, we have the same as you, R&D and technical. We're creating plant pollinator palettes, Now, because of your research, we're working with you to create plant pollinator palettes in each of those regions so that we can provide with our sedums those type of natives and perennials that we're going to need to help the bees and the butterflies and the birds. And so we look at it in 6 regions. So if you want to go to the info at columbia-green.com, we can certainly start giving you the pollinators and the natives that we would recommend in each of those regions. And we're just getting started, right? Noah, I mean, your DNA at Best Bees and that honey DNA research we did on the Chrysler building is a first in the world that I know of. And it's us collaborating to figure this out. And so now we're just getting started. And so I look forward to continuing to do this with the Best Bees company, and at Columbia Green, we're really excited to keep putting the research together. And we look forward to everyone that joined us today to keep pushing it forward, because in 6 more months, Noah, we're gonna have a lot more to share. Our teams are getting really excited about this research and changing and evolving as we grow.
I'm such a big fan of your work, Columbia Green. Listen, everybody, we have come to the end of our session. So on behalf of Vanessa Kaiches and myself, thank you for spending this hour with us. We hope you learned something today. Please go to columbia-green.com and follow them on social to learn more about Columbia Green Technologies, and visit us at bestbees.com or follow us on Instagram at bestbees, one word, for more information about our services, our beekeepers, our data yielding beehives, and our fabulous bees.
Awesome.
And also, just before the end, from Noah and I, it always takes a team to put this kind of event together. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of you showed up today. So a big shout out to Susan and Delaney from the Best Bees Company and Janelle Cameron from Columbia Green Technologies, because Noah and I know this. We can't just show up like this. This is an amazing presentation. Hundreds of you showed up today, and it's thanks to our team that creates this village. So thank you, Delaney, Susan, and Janelle.
Woo-hoo!
Thank you both. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Happy Earth Day to everyone tomorrow. I hope everyone's getting outside, getting grounded and participating in what the earth has to offer us. After I end the webinar in just a few seconds, you will all be prompted to take a survey. That data as additional data points for both of our teams to continue to learn and improve these types of educational programs that we offer. So please take a few moments to answer 6 questions and get us that additional data so that Noah and Vanessa and myself can take a look and improve for the next one. Thank you all.
Bye.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Bye, everyone.